What do you think government support should look like if there is something to replace the furlough scheme, even if it isn't as extensive?
Well, I think that's right. I think the government have got a few big challenges here. One is, how do we support those firms that would otherwise be viable but are really significantly disrupted and still disrupted by the pandemic? And that's in particular, thinking about aviation, about entertainment, about hospitality. There's risks that a lot of jobs will be lost as we continue to tighten up on social distancing or as a consequence of lower demand. But at the same time, not wanting to get in the way of necessary restructuring, particularly in retail, which is being hit by a large-scale move to online, which is driven by the pandemic, but it's about other things too. So I think what we want to see is really targeted wage subsidy support in very targeted sectors where firms can show that they're viable, but also really focusing our efforts on helping those people who are facing job loss to retrain, reskill, and get the new jobs that are still being created in the economy.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned sector-specific support. Those who oppose that say it's very difficult to draw the line between one sector and another, the supply chain to a sector, for example. How do you get around that? I mean, other bodies, I heard the CBI calling for something that's just lower levels of support across the economy than we have now, rather than picking sectors.
Yeah, and I think whatever we do, there's going to be rough justice, and I think there'll be some firms who might find that they fall the wrong side of the line. But I don't think we should let that stand in the way of us doing anything at all. The risk with a general wage subsidy in the economy would be that it's just not enough for those firms that face going to the wall because they cannot trade. And it may be too much or not necessary for those firms that are getting back to normal and that might need to restructure. So, we're not going to get this perfect, but there are clearly industries and firms that would be viable if they can just get through the winter months. So I do think targeting help there and then supporting those workers who risk losing their jobs across the economy should be our priority.
Are you against the extension? I mean, I know Rishi Sunak isn't going to do it now, but of the furlough scheme, or do you think that the UK government should be extending the furlough scheme like other governments in Europe?
So I don't think we should continue the scheme as it is now, but it is quite different to schemes that operate in other countries. In Germany, in France, there's more of a process around consulting and engaging a workforce. You often need to get approval from government or from labour authorities for payment. In New Zealand, for example, there's a threshold of showing the level of disruption you've got. Here in the UK, any employer could claim. Any employer could claim for wage support, and they just had to lay people off temporarily. So I don't think that was justified in the depths of lockdown, but we need something more targeted now that tries to balance those risks of protecting jobs, but also helping workers, helping people find new work.
Do we need to wash out the zombie companies, Tony? I mean, is it necessary for some companies, even maybe some industries, to fall in order for creative destruction to create progress? Well, I think it will be, and that's a really painful process, and that's this is an awful time for anyone to be losing their jobs. Losing a job in a recession can cause really lasting damage, but in the long run, it's far better to try to help people find new jobs in new industries that are growing than for people to risk being trapped in jobs that don't have prospects and don't have a future. And the one other point there, I think, is we do need to make it as easy as possible for firms to create jobs. And I think across the OECD, across the world, we need to be looking at how we can reduce labour taxes and labour costs, so it's as easy as possible for new firms to come in and create new jobs, create new opportunities.
And I've been listening to some bodies trying to find solutions here. For example, the TUC, they've been talking about the importance of there being a training element to whatever the government does to support the labour market. Tony, is there anything we can do on training that would be both useful and also able to be delivered in a speedy fashion so that it's useful?
Yeah, I think there's two things. One is the really short pre-employment training that can just get people through the door into a workplace and functioning in work. And that doesn't always require high levels of qualifications. It doesn't require, big, long courses. So putting as much of that in as possible, working with employers, is really important. But I think also we should look again at some of the approaches that look within industries to try and help people progress through through an industry or into higher level jobs too. And in digital, in the US, for example, there's really good examples of this, the work advance model in digital and technology industries. And looking at how we can have a more sectoral approach, I think would be really important too. So yeah, training needs to be an important part. Fundamentally though, I think helping people get back on their feet, start looking for work and find new jobs needs to be top priority.